Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy. This is the Summoner's Tale from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, summary, background, and interpretation by yours truly, Jimmy. So what happened? Well, hopefully you read the Summoner's Tale with Jimmy. This is the analysis. The summoner is furious after being portrayed as a corrupt soul snatcher when the friar told his tale. Do you remember that? The friar's tale? So now the summoner tells his own tale, featuring, of course, a corrupt friar. These guys don't like each other, do they? This is a pretty simple story. Friar goes betting, reaches Thomas, a rich guy's house, and after listening for a while, Thomas farts in the friar's hand. As his offering. Here, split this up. That's really all that happens. You'll also remember that there are interruptions between the friar and the summoner too while the summoner is speaking. Remember, they don't like each other, and the host has to intervene. These two guys just don't like each other. And have you ever been in a meeting where two people don't like each other? Have you ever been in a meeting like that? Have you ever been at a dinner where two people can't stand each other? It's really not comfortable, is it? But it's interesting, it never happened back then. It even happened back then, right? Even back then, you had people who didn't like each other. Go figure. Holy cow. God knows, the summoner narrates as the friar in his tale, I've labored long and hard, and your salvation is my special care. For that I've offered many a precious prayer. So what are we to make about this tale from an analysis point of view? I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Well, part of the difficulty that we face with this tale is that the translator, Theodore Morrison, who translated all of the Chaucer tales that we read, he cuts this tale short in the version that we read together. Probably he had a limitation placed on him by the publisher terms of pages that he was allowed when the volume was published, or he just didn't want to translate the entire tale. I don't really know. I didn't ask him. I don't think it's important. Nevertheless, he cut the tale short. And when he cuts the tale short, he puts this bracketed note in there. The summoner's tale, after this account how the friar swept the cat from the bench and made himself at home, continues to reveal at great length the friar's hypocrisy and greed. Remember, the anonymous narrator who's just narrating this, in this case, the summoner, doesn't really think much of the friar. The friar preaches to Thomas first on his own favorite theme, sin of gluttony, and then on Thomas's particular sin of anger, embellishing both themes with a profusion of old examples and authorities. Maybe that's why Morrison skipped it, I don't know. Finally, the friar gets down to the practical business of begging, and Thomas, who's exhausted, exasperated beyond control, the denouement of the story makes use of a situation current in the medieval anecdote. Thomas promises the friar a gift, if he, on his side, will promise to divide that gift equally with his fellow friars. The friar puts his hand where Thomas directs and receives a reverberation of air, the fart, of the same kind that Nicholas bestowed on Absalom in the Miller's Tale. Remember the Miller's Tale? Hopefully you read that with Jimmy. That was a good tale, wasn't it? Bawdy, funny. The problem of dividing the fart into equal shares is solved by a squire at the table of a neighboring lord to whom the friar rushes off in dudgeon, and the squire receives a new gown for his ingenuity, and the friar's humiliation is complete. The whole is a good Chaucer, but the partners' prologue and tale together make a far more impressive and dramatic example of the exposure of the methods of hypocritical preachers. So that note gives you an idea of what translators go through when dealing with text. And we have many classical tales have translators. Lysistrata has a translator. Hamlet is the original Shakespeare because that was a little closer to our language, but it still has many footnotes. So the translators on this website of classical stories often leave notes, but these decisions, they make an impact not only on how they deal with the language, but how their decisions impact on what you and I read together. That's why Jimmy gave you something from another translator on this tale at the end of our reading. Do you remember it? It's over to the right over there. If you don't remember it, you can read the tale again. Or you can put me on pause and just read this now. This is where he actually swears by it and shall you go with me? And then he delivers the fart. The fart. A lot of farting going on. Fart. What a great English word. Fart. I should have looked up what its origin is. Maybe I'll do that. Character. One of the 6 components of tragedy, according to Aristotle, right, is character. Character, Aristotle stresses, the central aim of tragedy is not to depict human personalities, but represent human action. So character is second in importance to the plot. Plot is more important. In this tale, plot is not really critical, but it's there. But I think character is more important. That's why I'm talking about character now. Character should always enhance the plot. If you think about any movie that you liked or any book, entertainment book that you read, character is very important to moving the plot. I talk many times, I mentioned Jack Reacher as a dime novel, entertainment novel, not classical literature. And the character of Reacher, who's now made into movies and such, is very important to moving the plot along. And in this case, it's the same thing here. The friar begs from a rich guy, and the rich guy farts into the friar's hand. So I want to take a look at the character. In the Poetics of Aristotle, the moral qualities and dispositions of the characters is important. This is the moral. We all have moral qualities because we're all characters in the play of life, right? You shape your character, you mold your character, your parents try to influence your character, and they become your moral qualities. Character reveals the moral purpose by what they choose to pursue or avoid. This is very important. Actions speak louder than words, right? Your actions will tell people about your character. Do you help an old lady across the street? Or do you just, let her go by herself and pray that she gets hit or doesn't get hit? You see what I'm saying? In the tale, like in most classical literature, we learn about character 2 ways. By what the character says and by what the character does. And sometimes we can learn about them from other characters. But then we always have to be careful about the reliability of the narrators who are saying this. Now, in this story, we have the anonymous narrator narrating what the pardoner said. The summoner, pardon me. No pun intended. What the summoner is saying. What all the people say, it's coming through the filter of the anonymous narrator, who's never named. We talked about this in the analysis of other tales. So in life, we're all in the first person narrator. We're all in the story. So if somebody says, Jimmy said this, you should verify it by seeing if I really said that. In the tale, as in most classical literature, as I said, characters say things and they do things. And other characters say things about other characters. So most of the time when you read with Jimmy, we're examining the difference between what they say and what they do. So in this case, the summoner is coloring his narrative because he hates the friar. This is a very important lesson in life. If you really, really, really hate somebody, and somebody asks you, what about Tommy? You're not going to color it, well, Tommy's a great guy. You're going to do everything you can to shape your narrative, right? And paint a picture of a guy you hate. Maybe you don't want to say, I hate him, so he's blah, 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 blah. But the things you choose to say about him are not going to be flattering, are they? So he hates the friar, and he colors his narration like with that. People's narratives are often shaded by their beliefs. In other words, People say things and their beliefs color what they say. That's why the saying action speaks louder than words is very important. Actions always speak louder than words. They always will. And you know yourself that saying one thing and doing another thing is very different. What one of Jimmy's favorite sayings in business? Money talks and BS walks. Think about that. If you're a BSer, and sales guys like me are always BSers to a degree, maybe not, I don't know. But money talks. Put your money where your mouth is. So what the actions and narratives in this tale? You should go back and read the tale again with a sense of watching what they say and do. Jimmy likes to give an example in real life of what you do. When you're talking to someone and you get into a conversation, it's very rare that you think of yourself outside of yourself. Now, don't get worried, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not telling you to be schizophrenic, but sometimes you have to watch yourself. For example, did you ever say, why the hell did I do that? Did you ever say that to yourself? Why the hell did you do that? Sometimes our actions are beyond our own comprehension, right? Well, when you're talking to somebody, you get into the moment. You get into talking like now I'm in the moment, but I'm actually looking at myself talking to you. What do you mean, Jimmy? It doesn't mean that I'm outside my body watching myself talking to you. It means that I'm aware of what I'm saying to you. Because sometimes people are unaware, and they call that the infamous Freudian slip. What is that? Well, that's when something comes out of your mouth that you don't want coming out of your mouth. And you have to qualify it by saying, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to call you a jerk. You should go back and read the tale again. Because one of the tells of the character is when Thomas's wife speaks to the friar. I want you to go over this with me for a moment. Now, sir, she said, one word and I am done. A little after you left our town, within these 2 weeks past, my child has died. I saw his death revealed, the friar replied. At home, as I was in our dormitory, I saw him. It was in a vision. Born to glory, not half an hour after he was dead. God teach me the truth. So also did the head of our infirmary and our sacristan. True, friars for these 50 years who can now celebrate at least their jubilee and walk alone, not 2 by 2. Thanks be to God who lends us life. I rose up quickly, and while down on my cheeks the tears were running thickly. And all our covenant, with no clamoring bells, we chanted the Te Deum, nothing else, save that to Christ I offered there and then thanks for his revelation in a prayer. She tells the friar that after he left a while ago, 2 weeks since he left, her child died. And the friar tells her that he saw the death was revealed to him when he was back in his home, the dormitory. So he offered thanks. He sang things with the other friars. Do you believe that? You want me to go back and reread it, or put me on pause and go read it again? This is a woman telling him, 2 weeks after you left, my child died. And he said, I saw his death. He tells the woman that he saw the kid's death. Do you believe that? Why is the friar saying this? Does the wife believe that? Does Thomas believe that? It's his child too, isn't it? Thomas's child. That's his wife saying that the child died. This is a very important tell in the character. This friar is quick to say, oh, no, I saw him die. Why is he saying that? Is he deluding the woman? Or is he just a BSer? Is he just a bullshitter, right? Here's some other tells about character. For trust me, you good people, on this score, our prayers are more effectual and more is open to us of Christ's hidden things than any layman, although they may be kings. We live in poverty, and abstinence, and laymen live in luxury and expense, and their foul delights, their meat and drink and wait. You see what he's saying is that their prayers mean more than your prayers. Is that true, or are all prayers equal? What do you think? Is a priest's prayer closer to God than your prayer? I'm just asking. These are important questions, and they're tells about the character. Because he's telling this. Trust me, trust me, trust me. Those are words to be careful of when people say, hey, just trust me. What does Reagan say? Trust but verify? Here's another one. Now, sir, the woman said, before I go, what will you have to eat? I'll set about it. I'll prepare the meal. Madam, he said, Yvonne is, do not doubt it. If from a capon I had just the liver, and some of your soft bread, only a sliver, and then please roast a pig's head, but for my sake I'd have no creature killed. Well, then if you did, I'd partake of a homely plenty with you, enough and quiet. I'm a man whose sustenance is light. My spirit finds its nurture in the Bible, and my poor flesh is so inured to trouble and wakefulness that my stomach is destroyed. What's he saying here? What's he saying here? No, don't bother. Just, you got great bread. I'll take a pig's head. I don't know. He's not saying he doesn't want to eat. He's saying, yeah, I'll eat. Make a great meal. Hypocrite. Aristotle emphasizes that tragedy is an imitation of action in life, not people, but the characters' qualities help that plot along. They're revealed through the actions and framework of the plot, and Jimmy might add by what they say. You have to be very careful when you read classical literature by what people say. Therefore, character determines a person's qualities, but it's by their actions that they are happy or reverse. Do you ever regret what you do? Or do you have no regrets? I'll repeat that question. Do you ever regret what you did? Or do you have no regrets? I know some people who say, I never regret anything. It's not that you regret something, or do you regret? Do you think about what you did, or do you just say, who cares? Plot is the soul of tragedy in the arrangement of incidents, but without action, there can be no character development. So the representation of character should always enhance the plot. Character serves to make the plot believable and engages the audience emotionally. That's what the summoner did when he's telling the tale of the friar and Thomas and his wife. It generates pity and fear. Aristotle also suggests 4 key qualities for tragic characters. By tragedy characters, you should read about my footnote about Aristotle. Good. Characters should be good, maintaining their purpose, should be virtuous, even if their actions aren't always perfect. Who is good in the summoner's tale? Is the friar good? Is the wife good? Is Thomas good? Who's good? Is the summoner good? The summoner's telling this tale of a friar because the friar told the tale of the summoner. You remember the story? Go back and read it. Most classical literature are the opposite of good, too. They create bad characters, bad, evil people, truly evil people. We've read some of that on here. Confused people, good people, bad people, medium people. Who is bad? By the way, what is bad? What do you mean when you say they're bad? Michael Jackson had a great song, Bad, right? What is that bad, if you're bad or good? Think about that. Think about it. Appropriate, harmonious. That's the other characteristic that we're talking about, right? The quality. A character's traits and actions should be suitable for their role and consistent with the overall portrayal. Is that true in this tale? Is the friar true to his harmonious and appropriate? Is it appropriate for him? It seems like all friars, according to the summoner, are what? BS artists. They're just full of doo-doo, right? And remember the image of the friars in hell coming out of Satan's butt? Do you remember that? Don't forget the audience of these tales. This is medieval England. Friars were notorious for selling indulgences like the partner. And just remember, the narrator, the anonymous narrator, is telling us these tales that other people are narrating theoretically. But you get the picture. This is a rich, as you'll see in my final analysis of all the tales, this is a rich tapestry of human beings. Just like you around you. It's the same thing. I was at a meeting last night where you could just see character revealed in how that meeting was run. Characters were revealed in how they filled the vacancy of the board. They just revealed themselves. It was astonishing to me. I said something, everybody laughed, but what I said was, is this an example of what goes around comes around? Because all they did is voted for themselves. There was no chance of an outsider getting into that board. And as a friend of mine said this morning about government acting like that, you really don't want to know how the quote-unquote sausage is made. My wife hates that statement, how the sausage is made. All right? Similar to us, that's another quality. Well, the audience should be able to relate to the characters and their struggles, allowing for empathy and pity and fear. Do you relate to anybody in this story? My wife used to take yoga classes, and there was a guy who would fart in one of the positions. and when you fart in yoga class, you always try to say, we don't know who did it, but of course somebody did it. There's a story I could tell you about grade school. Sidebar. Oh yeah, look it. I said the Jerome C. story. I'm going to tell you a story. True story. All Jimmy says is true. Well, maybe. Okay. So we're in church, and we were in grade school. I think we were in fourth grade, and all of a sudden, a certain aroma in Catholic grade school. One of the no-nos was to ask to go to the bathroom. You were always feeling guilty. Catholics were great uses of guilt to ask to go to the bathroom. So you had to try to control nature. I don't know if you've ever tried to control nature. It's not fun. In any case, we were in Mass, and all of a sudden, someone did not control nature. They pooped their pants. And so the stench started spreading. And finally, the nun came from behind us, because she always sat behind us to watch us so we don't talk and fart around. No pun intended. And so she came up to the side, said, Who did it? Who did it? And nobody would talk. And with the stench, you can't tell who did it. No one knew. We're all looking at each other. We know someone did, but you don't know who. And no one's going to admit that they pooped their pants in church. Well, I'm going to find out who it was. You wait. And then she went back. The Mass ended. The stench dissipated a little bit, but, this kind of stench stays. So we're walking back to the classroom because the church was outside the school, and you had to walk through the schoolyard. And suddenly down Jerome's pants comes the poop. And we all said, there, Jerome, it's Jerome. He did it. And Jerome looks around, sees his pants, and runs. He runs away. Runs for home. Get back here, says the nun, cries the nun. And Jerome keeps running. And when you're in fourth grade, you can run really fast. So the nun couldn't catch him. So we all went back to the class, and we were laughing. So he shows up a couple of days later, and the nun just whooped him. Just whooped him. It was sad. It was a sad story. We made fun of him for a while, but then we realized we shouldn't make fun of him because we were in that situation ourselves. I remember myself sitting in class in pain, trying to hold back from going because I couldn't ask to go to the bathroom. That's how intimidated we were. So, can I relate to this story about a fart in the hand? Yes. Maybe people today don't like to talk about farting, but it's a natural thing and consistent. Characters should behave consistently throughout the play. They should be consistent, and even if they're inconsistent, they should be consistently inconsistent. If that makes any sense. So Aristotle, but you can see that there's a consistency in this friar. He's a BS artist, right? I mean, he didn't see the child's death when he got back. If the woman didn't tell him that her child died, he should have led with that. He should have said, I know, you know what? I saw your child die. But he didn't. He waited for her to see it, which is often the sign of the con man. They wait for you to say something, and then they play off what you say. So the plot holds the primary position in the Aristotle's theory, and the character is second for making it all believable. And ladies and gentlemen, this is true of every piece of classical literature that we're reading together on Jimmy's website. Characters in particular, right, have a hero with a tragic flaw. You know, when you're talking about tragedy, which enable pity and fear because they make you pity them because you could be like that, and they make you fear because you could be like that. And that leads to catharsis, kind of like a cleansing, like, I'm glad it's not me. And in a comedy, it's a little different than a tragedy. Comedy is more light, but still possesses the same traits, consistent character, but maybe not as deep as a catharsis as a tragedy. So this is not a tragedy. This is just a bawdy tale. The plot is a simple plot. The cooked friar gets farted on. It's bawdy, bold, but remember Braveheart, the movie? Do you remember what the Scots did to the English before the battle that they fought? Do you remember Braveheart, the Mel Gibson? Great, great, great movie. Before they fought the English in that one big battle, they turned around with their butts and they picked up their skirts and they farted at the English. So farts in those days were something, I don't know, that you used tactfully, right? I'm not saying you should use it. Let's talk narrators. The summoner is the narrator of the tale, but it's through the anonymous narrator that we get the summoner's tale. He's talking to us about one of the pilgrims, and the summoner, right? It's not really third-person narration. It's first-person narration. We talked about this with every tale analysis, and that's very important to remember. Never forget, because, we get involved when we're reading. We forget who's talking to us, especially in this type of complex narration. So the anonymous narrator is telling us what the summoner said about the friar. You see, it gets confusing. You can lose yourself. But we're going to see more about the anonymous narrator when I analyze Sir Topaz. So what does this summoner guy look like? Do you remember the prologue? So I'm going to go back and read you what this guy looked like, the summoner. He was red as fiery cherubim in his face, pockmarked and pimpled, and his eyes were narrow. Remember, they're painting a picture with words. There's no cameras. There's no painters. There's no cell phones. There's just words. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, words are so important. What you're missing, what we are missing in this age of social media and BS, is the beauty of language and words to paint pictures in our mind. Yes. Do I use social media? Yes, for business, not for personal things. Why would I publish anything personal on social media? Why would you do that? I remember when social media was invented and I read about some guy's operation. Who cares about your appendix operation? No kidding. I mean, I should care, but I don't care. Do you care? So business for social media is great, but when you're writing a diary or in your journal and you're trying to paint a picture with words, It's so important to understand classical literature because those are the people who really, really, really understood words. He was red as a fiery cherubim, his face pockmarked and pimpled, and his eyes were narrow. Narrow. What does that mean? Calculating, right? Narrow eyes. Just that simple sentence, his eyes were narrow, as opposed to his eyes were wide. And remember, Chaucer's the writer. We don't talk about Chaucer too much. The anonymous narrator is narrating it, and he's the guy who's describing these people. He's in the story. It's not Chaucer, but Chaucer's the writer, and he's using the anonymous narrator to paint a picture of this guy for everybody to see. As lecherous he was as a cock sparrow. Just that one sentence. What's a lecher? Well, look it up. I'm not going to do all that for you. I think we did it when we were reading it, the tale. He's lecherous. Ooh, God. What's a cock sparrow? That's a cock sparrow wants to screw everybody in sight, right? His brows were scabby and black, and thin his beard, and his face that little children feared. Little children feared his face. Can you imagine in your imagination a face like this? I'm scared of it, and I'm not a kid. Brimstone and litharge bought in any quarter, quicksilver, coarse, borax, oil of tartar. No salve or no ointment that will cleanse or bite could cure him of his blotches. He's got bad skin. How's that for a commercial for skin cream today, huh? Do you need an ointment to cleanse and bite and cure your blotches? Livid white, or the knobs and nubs of his cheeks. Wow. There's no television. Remember, he's painting with words. He loved garlic, his onions, and his leeks. Have you ever been around someone do you eat a lot of garlic? Have you ever been around someone who eats a lot of garlic? Do you know garlic comes through your pores? You got to be careful of garlic. It's very healthy. I eat garlic. I take garlic supplements sometimes. It's good for you. But if you eat too much of it, better use some deodorant. And onions. I love onions. Your breath after onions, my wife will not come near me. Leeks. I make a great potato leek soup. He loved to drink the strong wine down blood red, and then he would bellow as if he had lost his head. Gets a little tipsy. And when he had drunk enough to parch his draught, nothing but Latin issued from his mouth. So when he was really tipsy, he would speak Latin to show off what? His education, because monks, right, studied Latin. And the common people didn't speak Latin. Suscipia Dominus sacrificium de manibus tuis, alarme gloriam nominis suis, salutinitate, quoque nostrum totiusque ecclesia sua sante. Do you think any more of me because I just told you some Latin? That's real Latin, by the way. But they don't call it the dead language for nothing. Nobody uses Latin anymore. So please, Pax tecum, peace be with you. He smattered up a few terms, 2 or 3, and then he had gathered out some decree. No wonder that he heard law Latin all the day, and everyone knows a parrot or a jay. See, everyone knows a parrot or a jay. They mock each other. They can cry out, "What, Paul?" as well as a pope. But give him a strange term, tell him something different, and he began to grope. So he basically learned by rote, just like Jimmy recited Suscipia Dominum. That was one of the Catholic prayers that he did when he was an altar boy. He's got many more up his sleeve. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I use that anyway because it's through my fault, through my most grievous fault. It's a great, when you do something wrong, next time you do something wrong and your mom catches you or somebody catches you, just say, mea culpa. And they'll say, what? Repeat it. mea culpa. What? Repeat it. Mea maxima culpa. Then they'll hit you. What does it say about this guy? Is the anonymous narrator calling him a parrot? His little store of learning was paid out, so questo quod juris, the question of what is right, he would shout. He was a good-hearted bastard. Do you have any friends that you can apply that? He's a good-hearted bastard and a kind one. If there were better, it was hard to find one. He'd let a good fellow, for a quart of wine, the whole year around enjoy his concubine. Huh. Is he a pimp too? Scot-free from summons, hearings, fines, or bail, and on the sly he could flush a little quail. If he liked like a scoundrel, no matter for church law, he would teach them that he need not stand in awe. If the archdeacon threatened with his curse, that unless his soul was in his purse, for in his purse he would be punished well, the purse, he said, is the archdeacon's hell. So he'd preach against the guy who hired him, right? The archdeacon. Of course, I know that he lied. I know. Who's I? The anonymous narrator. That he lied in what he said. Surely a guilty man should hold in dread the curse that damns by excommunication, while absolution brings a man salvation. And let him heed, if higher counsels fail, the writ remaining the accused to jail. So Morrison gives you a little footnote here that Chaucer's basic saying of cursing ought each man guilty to be afraid, blah, 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 blah. That's not important. Within his power, and well, he saw to this, he had the young girls of his diocese, and he knew their secrets, and he heard their least design, a garland big enough to be a sign outside an alehouse balanced on his head, as shield he bore a great round loaf of bread. So the summoner, right, is a person who summons and calls forth something particular, magical, or in legal context. And historically, a summoner refers to a church official of the Middle Ages whose job was to summon people to court. Remember, we've seen this guy in stories. So this is a wonderful way to look at these people and put them in context of what they're saying. Imagine them saying this. Plot and Aristotle. Let's wind it up. So getting back to our friend Aristotle, this plot character, we talked a lot about character and plot. So plots are simple or complex. We said this is a simple plot. It doesn't really have reversal recognition. Complex plots do. But this one is just a story about a beggar, a friar who begs, keeps talking and talking and talking and talking, and finally Thomas, the guy he's trying to get money from, farts in his hand. There's no reversal of fortune. Actually, the friar gets exactly what he deserves. So there's no recognition that I'm a hypocrite. He just keeps going on and doing what he does. But it makes you think. That's really the argument of these tales of all classical literature. As Albert Camus says, it's not the importance of the argument or whether it's true or not, but it's the fact that it makes you think. What you read should make you think. When you read the dime novels, they don't make you think. They just entertain you. Most of the time when you're watching television, it doesn't make you think. It just entertains you, even in a complex plot. But classical literature should make you think. If it doesn't make you think, it's probably not classical literature. Well, Jimmy, why would you say that the Summoner's Tale, which is a story about a friar who gets his hand farted in, makes you think? Well, it should make you think about who's asking you and telling you things. What is morality? What is good? What's a con man? What are you really listening to what's being said? Or do you get farted, right, into your hand? The people who Bernie Madoff, right? Robbed. You know the story of Bernie Madoff? He was a crook at the highest level, Ponzi scheme guy. Look him up on the internet. He basically farted in everybody's hand. He's like the friar. But he farted in everybody's hand. He took them for the cleaners because they believed they could be rich beyond their wildest dreams if Bernie would just invest for them. And watch out for conmen, or is it something like, what really is religion? What is faith? Are all friars like this? Are all religious people just conmen? I don't think so. But how do you separate one from the other? What does that mean? What does that mean? What is religion? What is faith? Classical literature is rich in meaning, and I bet if you were to read this tale again, you'd get a lot more out of it. You've been reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. This is the analysis of the Summoner's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer, translated by Theodore Morrison. Thanks for being here. I really enjoyed it. You'll find all the Canterbury tales translated by Theodore Morrison from his translations on this website. Each tale will also have an analysis. That QR code will bring you to my YouTube channel. And please, if you have email, right? Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. I would enjoy hearing from you. I hear from a lot of you. I enjoy it. I try to answer as many as I can. I'm not inundated, so I try to answer all of them. So please send me an email, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, and have a great day. Thanks for stopping by. Keep coming. We've got a lot to talk about.